We now begin our discussion of this app's primary activity class, which is the RouteTracker class that, as you can see here on line 29, extends map activity. Now, map activity is one of several new classes and interfaces that we'll be using in this app, and in particular, it's part of the Google Maps API classes. If you extend class map activity, it makes it easier for you to embed Google Maps capabilities into your app, and that's why we've chosen look at the various import declarations, starting with the ones here at lines 7 through 11. Now, a location manager object, the one that we're importing at line 11, is used to give you location services on your device. It allows you to choose from various so-called location providers, and there's different ways you can get location data. So, for example, I might want location data from GPS, or if I don't need location data that's quite that precise, we can choose to use location data that's actually done based on Wi-Fi access points that happen to be close by. And there's other location providers as well. And in order to choose the location provider for your app, you need to work with a location manager to do that. Now, when you have a location provider that's giving your app data, you'll be using location listeners to respond to location information that's submitted to the data as instances of the type location. In addition, when you first go to obtain a location provider from the location manager, you'll specify the criteria for selecting the provider via a criteria object. And with that object, you'll be able to specify how accurate you need the data to be. You'll be able to specify the battery usage. So one of the things you want to be careful of when developing any app is trying to minimize battery use so that the device can stay functioning as long as possible. You can also specify information about bearing, which is the direction you're traveling, speed, altitude, and even the monetary cost of the provider if there's some cost associated with it. And then based on the settings that you provide in the criteria object, the location manager will return to you an appropriate location provider. Now, we also have included the GPS status type here at line 8, and this one is used to help determine whether or not you've received a GPS fix, as it's called. So basically, you walk outside with your device and you load up this app, and it really can't start tracking you properly until it figures out where you are, and it can't do that until it connects to several GPS satellites to give you the best possible GPS data. So we'll take advantage of the GPS status class to help us determine whether or not the device was able to find enough GPS satellites to give us the information we need for tracking purposes. Now, in addition to those various Android location package classes, we also are using a new class from the Android.os package, the so-called Power Manager. And again, the Power Manager gives us the ability to control the device's power usage and, more specifically, do things like prevent the screen from turning off or prevent the device from going to sleep. And that's important, that latter part is important in this app because even if the user turns off the screen on their device, let's say they're going for a jog and they want to track their route, they don't need to be looking at the screen the whole time. But we still want the app to track that information, so we don't want the device to go to sleep because then it won't be receiving any GPS data at that point. So we'll use the Power Manager for disabling the ability of the device to go to sleep while tracking is enabled. Now, we also have several other new features here. Like we said, we're going to be using a toggle button in this example, and when you're manipulating a toggle button, you'll be listening for its onCheckChanged event, or change event, excuse me, and that will just tell us when the status or the value of the toggle button has changed. And then finally, we have the various classes from the Maps packages that are provided by Google. The Map Activity class, like we already told you, is used to display map information on the screen, and more specifically, a map view within that map activity is where the information will get displayed. A map controller, here on line 26, is used to do things like panning and zooming of the map. And geopoints will be used to translate the GPS data into information that can be used for displaying things on the screen. Now let's take a look at some of the instance variables and fields that we'll be using throughout this app. We will be discussing these as we use them, but I did want to take a moment to point out several key things to you here. In particular, you'll notice that we have an instance of a class called RouteOverlay, which is one of our own classes in this project, and we'll be using this to create the graphics that will appear on top of the Google map, overlaid on top of it. And then separately, we also have an instance of our own class bearing frame layout, which is a subclass of frame layout. And we'll be using this to rotate the map view on the screen to face in the direction that you happen to be traveling. Now, when I first tested this app for you in an Android virtual device, the map always stayed oriented in the same direction. However, if you install this on a real device and go outside and start walking around, you'll notice that the map moves around on the screen based on your heading.